Howdy folks, Rick Boy here, fixing to make my second YouTube video. Some of what I'm going to talk about in this video will refer to things that were discussed in the first, so if you didn't see the first, this one ain't going to make any sense, and according to the number of views that I've got, nobody saw the first, so hey, but I'm going to go ahead and keep making it anyhow. If you remember my burner here, I tried to follow the loosely follow the instructions of David D. Has a couple YouTube videos on the building of the Quickie all fuel burner, and that's what I had tried to build. And you see that it does look a little different now than in the first one. I had several ideas as to why it wasn't working. One, it seems to me that what reading I've done and looking at, in order for this waste oil burner to be successful, when you're starting it on something else to heat it up, what you're heating up is you have to heat up something that the vegetable oil is going to be coming in contact with when you switch it over to the oil, so that it'll already be hot and it will vaporize the oil and make it flash when it hits it. So my jet assembly was so very close to the end of the pipe that even when I had it burning with the help of a propane torch, it wasn't heating back this way very much, and that's a pretty heavy pipe. So I was thinking that I needed something out this direction, more charge to discharge, that would be lighter weight metal. They could get hot, get red quicker, something for the oil to flash against to try to help sustain that fire if I ever did get it going. So that was the reason why I took this light duty piece of sheet metal here and just kind of wrapped it in a circle and used a hose clamp there to hold it on the end. But I had kind of thought that, well, maybe this here will help a little bit with the with giving that something to heat up and get hot for the oil to flash and keep sustaining itself. So I did that. I also had removed the cap off the fuel tank here because the vent holes in this cap, seeing as how it was a fuel tank for a small single cylinder engine, the vent holes are not very big, and the oil was thick enough in there that I kind of thought that, well, could it be possibly that we're creating a vacuum here? Because when I very first, started everything up, it was drawing the oil good, but then as time went on, I was fighting it, and it didn't seem like it was picking up the oil like it ought to, and all that. So I took this cap completely loose. So I thought, well, that'll take care of the possible insufficient fuel tank vent problem. I had turned on my brooder lamp here in the back, putting some heat up onto the tank here to warm things up. I had that on for probably an hour and a half or something while I was doing other things, and like now it's 50 degrees and cold and dreary here yet again. If I get a light, I don't know if my flashlight will shine down in that fuel tank well enough to let the camera pick up what it looks like down in there or not. But when it's cold like this, you can see it's kind of, well, maybe you can't see, but it's kind of like yellow lardish. It's coagulated. It's pretty doggone thick in there. Put that heat lamp on it for a while, and it'll clear. It clears back up and liquefies like cooking oil that's ready to fry French fries in or whatever. So I had that light on for a couple hours. So I thought, well, I'll leave this cap off. That will rule out the possibility of it being a vent problem. I got the fuel heated up, even warmer than it was the first time, so it ought to flow okay. Now I've got this extension out here on the end. I'm definitely not a foundry guy, but I think, and there again, it's got kind of a odd spellings, so pronunciation and spelling and stuff, that ain't my specialty, but I think they call it a trier or a twier or something like that. No, I didn't say that. Whatever. I put that on there thinking that thin metal sticking out would get hot fast and give the oil something to vaporize against, gasify, hopefully sustain itself. Took care of what could have been a vent problem back here on the supply end of the deal, warmed it up, so I was ready to try again. So I had made mention in the first video that when I first got this nozzle pieces all screwed together, and just put the air to it in the shop, I cranked my regulator, brought up the air pressure on the regulator here just a little bit, opened up my fuel valve, and put my finger, of course I didn't have no hose or anything on it, but opened up my fuel supply valve, put my finger down here at the end of this nipple, and felt my finger be drawn onto that nipple. And when I would pull it away, I could, you know, kind of, it was picking up good, and I was impressed by that. And I, by golly, this thing might just work. I don't know if you happen to notice, to see that oil trying to move. Here's oil in the line right here, and if I open that valve to let some of the air that was trapped ahead of it get out of there, the oil did come up, but you see we got an air bubble back here as well. All right, when I was getting ready to try to run it, I saw all of this kind of stuff. So before I even tried to light it, I told myself, well, I'll go ahead and, of course I had the air hose hooked up, and I'll go ahead and put a little air to it and open this fuel valve until I see it go ahead and draw the fuel oil up, or I mean the vegetable oil up, until it's here, so that I know that everything's pretty much primed. And much to my surprise, when I put a little pressure here with the regulator and opened up that valve, the oil that was just about like it is there right now, instead of being drawn in to the nozzle assembly, it pushed it backwards, and I heard it gurgling and bubbling up here in the tank. And I was kind of like, what? So I shut the valve off and contemplated that for a second. Did I really see that? So sure enough, I took all the air pressure away, opened up the fuel valve, saw oil come down into the line down here, just like it is right now, hooked the air back up, turned the regulator up a little bit, opened the fuel valve, she blew it right back this other direction and was gurgling in the tank. I was like, well, that's definitely not right, and that definitely would go a long ways towards explaining why I was having problems with it picking up fuel. So I took this end back off of here, you know, the twier or whatever it is out there on the end. I took that off, took the very jet end of my nozzle off, checked to make sure that everything there was clean and clear and everything there looked good. So I put that all back on and done it again. You know, brought the fuel up into the line where I could see it getting almost to the nozzle, put the air on, cranked up the regulator, give it a little bit of juice there, and opened up the fuel valve, wanting the draw, the suction, the siphon, whatever you want to call it. I wanted to see the fuel get drawn up. I saw just the opposite. It was blown backwards into the tank and bubbled in the tank. So I have not done anything else with it since then, but I am suspecting, the only thing that makes any sense to me, back here in the back of this burner, where you solder, you know, you got your piece of copper tubing that has the MIG tip on the end of it, which is your air jet. And so when that comes back through that brass nipple there, getting close to the 90-degree elbow on the back end of that assembly, that's where you solder it there. And so that any air coming through this is only supposed to be able to go through the center of that copper tubing and through the MIG tip to come out the end. And the MIG tip is soldered into the other end of that piece of copper tubing. So to my way of thinking, in order for there to be air from the back getting into that nozzle and creating pressure inside of there that's wanting to blow the other direction, I believe one or both of them solder connections must have failed. I just used soft solder on them, and I'm not sure. I have to look it up. I don't know what the difference is of the melting point between soft solder, you know, plumber's kind of solder, and silver solder. I do know that silver solder is stronger and has a higher melting point. How much higher, I don't know. What I used was soft solder. I don't recall anyone specifying that it had to be silver solder, but I do remember that as I was doing all this playing around with everything there the other day, as I was, you know, getting the burner to burn with the propane torch doing the igniting, this valve here did get warm enough that it was uncomfortable for me to hang on to it for very long to adjust it with my hands. So I'm kind of thinking that apparently that burner must have took enough heat that that solder connection has failed, so some of this air, instead of all of that air being directed through the center of the copper tubing and through the center of the MIG tip and out the O23 opening on the MIG tip like it's supposed to be, them solder joints have failed one way or the other, and it's letting the air pressure get inside of the T, and that's what's pushing it backwards to the tank, because the other orifice, the last jet out there, is small enough that the air that's bypassing here, there's more of it than what can come out that end jet, so that's what's backing it up and blowing things the other direction. So whatever, I just wanted to kind of explain what I think happened there, and I'm going to be taking it all apart here now to try to see if that's what really happened or not, but that's my theory. We'll find out whether I'm right, wrong, or otherwise, but it definitely is supposed to draw the fuel into that burner. It's not supposed to blow it backwards, and it was drawing it in initially before it was, you know, used and got hot. So I'm thinking that I probably had a solder failure somewhere, and if I did, that would explain what happened, and I've already got another plan on what and where I might go next. But I kind of like an answer to why this one failed, and like I said, I really don't want to make videos to highlight all my failures, but on the other hand, nobody's perfect. Stuff happens, and you know, I just took a shot at making it kind of loosely based on another fella's design, because I didn't think things was all that critical. It didn't look that tough. Hey, I can do that. I think I may have found, you know, it's not quite as easy as I thought it was, or that he made it look. So I'm really trying to get to the bottom of why mine don't work, so I can tell you why mine don't work, so that if and when you want to copy David D's design and try to make one, you'll not only have his instructions and plans, but you'll have my experiences of throwing one together really quick and what didn't work for me, so you'll know what to avoid. So stay tuned. Rick the Poor Boy. We're going to try to get to the bottom of this, and I'll show you some better pictures if and when I ever find out what really happened. Peace out. Thanks a lot.